What you just heard and are currently hearing is part of my recreation of the Jurassic Park soundtrack that I made with only a PlayStation 5 and a controller. If you've seen one of my other videos, you'd know the software I use to make everything is called Dreams. It lets you make your own games, animations, or pretty much anything you can think of. And something I don't think gets nearly enough attention is the music creation side of it. I went from knowing nothing about orchestration or music creation in Dreams to being able to recreate a soundtrack from one of the best film composers of all time. Now before we go any further, I just need to make it clear that this video and my channel are not associated with Universal. This was just a side project I was doing while working on our game previously called Jurassic Park Operations. Go ahead and watch the last video on that for more information, but for now, all you need to know is that the game is now called Cretaceous Kingdom. With all that out of the way, let's get into the video. When I first started working on Cretaceous Kingdom, I knew it would need a soundtrack, but I had no good way of importing songs into Dreams. So that meant I would have to use Dreams' built-in music creation tools. So here was my very first attempt at recreating the Jurassic Park theme in Dreams. It's a bit rough, but at this point I was just creating everything by ear and memory, so it was in no way accurate to the actual song on the soundtrack. But it was a start, and I'm excited to finally show how much I've improved over the last 3.5 years I've been working on this game and its music. Okay, hold on. I feel like I jumped a little too far ahead there. After my first attempt, the very next thing I worked on was a recreation of an actual song from the soundtrack titled Welcome to Jurassic Park. You can already hear some improvements, as it actually sounds similar to the real track. Unfortunately, the mixing and instrument samples sound a bit off, and I was still doing everything by ear, so it was by no means accurate to the real song. Luckily, shortly after that recreation, Dreams had a major update that introduced a lot of amazing new orchestral instruments to use. Kinda feel like they might have been teasing me with that last sample. Without this update, I don't think I would ever have gotten as far as I am now. Just listen to how much better it sounds with these new instruments. Obviously the mixing is still a bit off, but it sounds much closer to the original. Before we go any further, I just want to say that my recreations are definitely not going to be any better than the original score, nor are they meant to be. These virtual instruments will just never come close to the sound of a real live orchestra. My versions were mostly made for the purposes of learning and also for a fun challenge to see how far I can push Dreams. Anyway, around this time I was also starting to work on my own original tracks, since trying to recreate songs by ear just wasn't working as well as I wanted. This was probably one of the biggest hurdles I had to get past if I wanted to accurately remake any of the Jurassic Park tracks in Dreams. Luckily, after some research I was able to find this, the complete handwritten score for Jurassic Park. Well, mostly complete. Some of the pages were missing and the resolution was certainly not the best, but it was the actual songs with all the correct notes and instruments. It had pretty much everything I needed. All I had to do was pick the first song I was going to remake. My main goal when I first decided I was going to recreate the soundtrack was to remake the full 8 minutes and 53 seconds of Journey to the Island. This is one of my favorite pieces of music of all time, and I felt like I could learn so much by trying to recreate it. So I gave it a try. Okay, so yeah, it didn't really turn out too well. I got a few seconds into the recreation and then it just fell apart. There were obviously a lot of things I still didn't understand about John Williams' notation and other aspects of music theory. I had to start with something a bit less complex. I decided to go with High Wire Stunts. This song was actually going to be used for the first trailer for the game, but it was eventually scrapped for the trailer we have now. Here's a preview of what it sounded like and a short clip from the original trailer. I wouldn't say it's terrible, but... well, who am I kidding? It's pretty awful. The mixing is all wrong and the footage isn't any better. It still very clearly sounds like virtual instruments playing on a MIDI track. I also never actually got past the first few seconds of the song. The next song I sort of tried was the Raptor Attack, and well... yeah, this one didn't turn out well either. At this point, I really didn't know if it was going to be worth it or not, or if I was ever going to be able to recreate a full song. Despite that, I kept trying because I knew I would have to improve over time. The next song I tried was titled Jurassic Park Gate. This wasn't the full song either, but I think I did a decent job of capturing the feel of the original track. I even extended it a little and played around with the orchestration. Again, there's a lot that could be improved, but with each song, I was learning more and more and getting faster at transcribing the handwritten score. The next few songs I worked on were The Coming Storm, Eye to Eye, Opening Titles, and Incident at Isla Nublar. Again, most of these remained unfinished, but with each song I was improving. Finally, I thought I was ready to try Journey to the Island again, but this time I wasn't going to start from the beginning. I was instead starting from when they first saw the island in the film. This was probably the most iconic part of the track, and that would help keep me invested enough to keep working on it. I felt like breaking up the song into different parts and working on one at a time would help me avoid getting burnt out. It kind of worked, but really, there's only so much squinting at notes and trying to understand what this random squiggle means I can take. So over the course of the past few years, I've been slowly working on each part of the song and improving little by little. The next part of the song I worked on was called The Entrance to the Park. This is the part that plays when they first reach the visitor center in the movie. While I was working on that part, I also finally started working on the dinosaur theme. Like all the other tracks, this one started off a little rough, but improved over time. After remaking that portion, I decided to take a break from Journey to the Island and tried working on some other tracks like The History Lesson, and A Tree for My Bed. I'm sure you might have noticed, but around this time I was finally starting to figure out some techniques to make the instruments sound better and improve the mixing. Before this point, I was mostly focused on getting the notes and instruments right, but after some experimentation, I realized how important the mixing can be in making it sound more like a real orchestra. One technique that I used to help majorly improve the sound was adding reverb. This helps a lot to make the instruments sound more like they're performing in an actual room. Another very useful technique I learned to use was adjusting the surround pan and stereo width of each instrument. If you listen to any of John Williams' scores, you'll notice that every instrument is clearly playing in a different position. So the left ear might hear more predominantly flutes, while the right ear hears more of the double bass section and French horns. It takes a bit of adjusting, but once you get it right, it helps the overall sound of a track sound more like it's coming from a real orchestra, rather than all of the instruments just playing at the same position in a room. The EQ filter also plays a huge role in the sound of an instrument. It can make the French horn sound more muted by adjusting the high cut frequency, or really emphasize the rumble and low end of a timpani. However, it's important not to go too far with adjusting the EQ. Going too far can make certain instruments sound worse or draw too much attention to themselves. Now it was time to get back to my full recreation of Journey to the Island with all the new techniques I learned. I had 3 major sections of the song mostly completed, but I was still missing a good amount. So I started working on it from the beginning once again. Just listen to how much better the newer version sounds compared to my first attempt. In no way was it perfect, but it was certainly much better. Over the course of about a month, I spent a few hours each day just slowly transcribing sections of the song and tweaking each instrument to try to match the original. It was tedious, but every time I added more, I got more excited to hear the final product. Actually transcribing the notes felt like it took the longest, but the mixing might have taken just as long with this song in particular. I spent so much time adjusting every single instrument until I was happy with the sounds. There's only so far you can go with these samples, but I'm satisfied with where I ended up. However, I did run into another problem. With so many different sounds being loaded at once, even on a PS5, there was occasionally a distorted or delayed sound that would completely ruin the listening experience. It doesn't happen too often on a PS5, but I'll demonstrate it on a PS4 just to show how bad it can get. Fortunately, there was a bit of a workaround to this issue. I noticed it mostly happened when a bunch of notes were being triggered at the same time. So I went through the song and ever so slightly moved the notes to play milliseconds later at different times. This way, it wouldn't have to try to play hundreds of sounds at the same exact time. It was also such a minuscule change that it was completely unnoticeable when listening to it. One final issue that I had that I couldn't really solve was at this one specific point in the song when a suspended cymbal was supposed to play. Unfortunately, there are so many other sounds that begin playing before the cymbal is supposed to go quiet that it completely cuts off the cymbal. This was one of the only issues I wasn't able to fix since it's just a problem of too many sounds playing at once, and Dreams just can't handle it. So this was the one thing I had to add in post. I just recorded the full song without the cymbal playing and then added the suspended cymbal afterwards. Otherwise, everything you hear is playing in real time in Dreams. So with that, the song was finally done. It was a tedious and long journey, but I think it was worth it in the end. It's crazy to think that everyone with a PlayStation 4 or 5 has the ability to make music like this. I learned so much from doing this, and now I'm making my own original songs using the same mixing and orchestration techniques. And you'll be able to hear all of my original songs once Cretaceous Kingdom releases. Before I go, I want to thank all my patrons and everyone who's watched this far. I'm sure a lot of you want to hear the finished product, but I won't be playing the full song in this video for copyright reasons. However, if you want to hear my full cover of Journey to the Island, then click this video on screen right now. Thank you all so much for watching, this has been Krenautican, and I'll see you next time.